It is both an honor and a privilege for us, coming from the Department of Higher Education and Training, to address you on the 2025 Standard Bank Top Women Conference, convened under the empowering theme, Empowerment Through Education, Unlocking South Africa's Next Generation. What a powerful theme indeed. We are on the back foot of the Women's Month, where we celebrated the strides that we have made so far in our country and in the world where it comes to advancing the women's prospects in all our life. It is also important to note that while there has been many strides made, there is still a lot that still need to be done. And the potential is out there for us to do better. There should be a consistent recognition of women who are in fields where they were previously dominated by males. We must always consider the future now, and with STEM careers being the fielded as well as the economically viable options in today's world, we highlight that women need to ensure that we are part of those STEM careers. I'm certain as well that in this room today, we need to help guarantee constant innovation and visionary custodianship of education. In 2022, the Gender Parity Index indicated a significantly higher enrollment numbers of women than men in our higher education institution. And in 2021, women made up the majority of enrolled students in South Africa's public higher education institutions of learning. And this tells us that indeed we have more and more women recognizing that education is the key if we are to advance. And we've seen as well statistically that 61.4% of the total enrollment in our higher education institution has always been women. And in fact, if we look at this, the GER is commonly used as a proxy to measure the degree of participation of our women. It is often used internationally to compare the education levels of the people across numerous countries. And that is why we also want to make sure that in its limitation, notwithstanding that the GER produced the finding of uncertainty that South Africa's female participation rates in its tertiary education, it remains significantly higher than the comparable countries. And it's very encouraging that as a country, compared to the countries such as India, China, Philippines, Malaysia, we still have higher numbers of female or of women in the higher education institutions. That actually shows the potential that we have as a country to can excel in many fields, particularly when it comes to the lifelong learning. And it goes without saying, therefore, that in many barriers we are yet to overcome as women, but marked with socio-economic and structural issues that inhibit the slowdown in the success of women, young and old, we still excel when it comes to the recognition that women put education as a priority in their lifelong learning. We are also want to indicate that as the Department of Higher Education, looking at our development plan, but some of the targets that we set for ourselves in the higher education and training are based on the cross-cutting, interdependent implementation of the themes that some of them, all the speakers have been speaking about. And one of the areas that we have been looking at as a department is that there has to be a concerted effort in looking at the transition between the basic education and higher education, because we're seeing a lot of disjuncture in terms of how we move even our children from the basic education to the higher education. That is why as the department we are beginning to say we need to look at some of the themes that will help our country, but also help our young people during this transition to the higher education. And some of these has been, first of all, to lay the solid foundation for a long and healthy life on the higher education and scientific achievement. The other one is to build properly qualified, professional, and competent teaching, academic, and research in the public service, but also in the private sector. The other one that we're looking at is the building of a strong, coherent set of institutions for delivering quality education, science and technology, innovation, training and skills development. The other one is expanding the production of highly skilled professionals that enhance the innovative capacity of individuals in the nation, but also to make sure that lasting education and innovation becomes a part of a living lifestyle, because we believe that if we were to put innovation at the center of our growth, there's a lot that we can begin to see shifting the needle. The other one is creating the educational and the national science system that serves the needs of our society. And these are some of the areas that we are looking at the Department of Higher Education to ensure that we really begin to drill down in terms of looking at the education, whether it's the higher education or the lifelong education. So when we look at the youth, it goes without saying that the youth unemployment in our country is one that is really troubling, but also one that is something that all of us need to make sure that we work hard to bridge that unemployment, but also the inequality that we see around our communities. The other area that I would also like to emphasize on this issue of education is the one that when we look at how our young people have been, going about their education, it is clear that there is a lot that we need to do. But what is also encouraging is that where we see many families, women, emphasizing education, we see a lot of young people being encouraged to go for their education, but also to emphasize the education in their lifestyle. So when we look at issues such as how young people are looking at themselves as they grow and looking at education, we look at the initiative that exists and perhaps what can be considered, it should be something that entices our young people. Youth inclusion is one of the areas that we really begin to earnestly to look at, particularly within the intergenerational conversation. And I'm glad that as we see such a broad variety of women in this room, it's something that we need to begin to put on our agenda. How do we begin to dialogue with our young people, to dialogue with our young girls? Acknowledging that our differences should not be a deterrent, but they should be considered as a gateway into understanding each other. And the youth, with its innovation, the worldviews of the elders and their wisdom, many of us can find a ground to ensuring that we bridge that gap. We also need to be able to share some of the successes that we have experienced as the elder people. E.g., how we teach our young people the soft skills. And we've seen even in many companies are now encouraging or emphasizing what we call the soft skills in how they are doing intakes or hiring people. Understanding how do we make sure that young people understand themselves? How do they manage money? How do they learn to communicate? Creativity. How do we make sure that we share some of those experiences that we ourselves have had to go through in this journey? Our systems of schooling, unfortunately, does not prepare many of our kids for the working environment or for the entrepreneurship skills. So we are not taught emotional resilience. We're not taught at school how to save money, how to invest money. So we need to teach our skills that success does not come from the system, but it comes from escaping the system, but also looking at ourselves, how do we innovate? How do we dare to dream? We also need to teach our children that dreaming is part of life and how to use the information that we have to push the boundaries and ensure that we breach some of the skills that we might not be having.